Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Leonard Simmons Rogers, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience. Hi, Leonard.
Hello, Peggy. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So feel free to start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
All righty. Well, it all starts out with a little bad 3-year-old following an uncle. I was following my uncle who had just left out of the door, and I guess my mother was in the other room, so she didn't see me. So I decided I'm gonna follow him. So I just bust out the little screen door. It was a little light screen door. It would have been no problem for me to open. And before you know it, I'm pitty pattering my way down the sidewalk. And he was a pretty good distance away, but I was really trying to make up some space and started trying to run a little faster to get to him. And I never could reach him, but I did reach the street at one point. I got off the from the curb. I was fixing to step off the curb into the street. And when at the point I actually did step off the curb, I could see something in my peripheral vision coming at me. And as starting to turn and see what it was, something, and to this day I still don't know what it was, Peggy, but something seemed to come in between me and whatever that was, and it caught my attention. So as I was trying to see what it was, it just as quickly exited to off to my right. So as I'm looking to my right to see what that was, I, I started to turn back around and was at that point I was hit by the car. Um, and when I was hit by the car, the thing that resonates for me most, and what I think actually facilitated the set of death was the back of my head hitting the street. The car hit me with such force that my head almost went by itself and without my body and hit the street. And when it did, it was like a pause button was pushed. And when I say pause, I mean like I could see. I was looking up at the river, and but I couldn't move my eyes around. They seemed fixed. But I'm basically thinking I'm fine at this point, Peggy. So I immediately tried to just basically get up. So I found when I was trying to get up that nothing would work. I couldn't have any movements. There was no movements in my body at all. And it's kind of worried me a little bit. So I, tried to get up some more. And then all of a sudden I hear an audible voice tell me to let go. So I heard the voice and it sounded like somewhat familiar, like I should have known it was a male voice. Um, I say I say like it was authoritative, but like caring. And but hearing it made me frantically want to get up some more. So I just basically tried to get up, and I did this for I guess a couple of more seconds or minutes or whatever. And it got to the point that it was almost like a workout. Like it was getting exhausting. So at this point, I'm trying to move some more, and then I heard the voice tell me again, let go. So at this point, after hearing the voice, it was almost like, you know what? At this point, I'm so tired, I will let go. Um, it's like I was trying so hard to stay inside of this body, and all the while, I could have released myself by just letting go of my body and whatever else was attached to it. And I think that happens to all of us. I think when we reach that point, we can actually leave bodies. So when I decided to let go, uh, I felt a vibration that started from my feet and it went up to the top of my head. It was like voo, 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 voo. And when it got to the point where almost like the sounds were in unison, just like one big woof, all of a sudden I find myself like this detached from my body. And I explained the detachment or the feeling of leaving my body, feeling not unlike the first movements of an elevator. You know, you get on the elevator, it moves, it kind of jerks a little bit, like releases. Well, that's kind of what I felt. And next thing you know is I'm floating. And when I stop floating and moving, now I see things from a third person perspective, like I'm actually standing up. And as I look around, I can see the buildings and I can see, the street, and I can see everything except the one thing that caught my attention was the color was off. Everything looked like black and white, basically.
Like what?
And
You cut
like
out. What was it?
it looked almost like the negatives of a photo. That's what everything looks like it was the negative of a photo. And as I'm looking at all of this this scene, I hear a woman I heard a voice tell me to come to her. And as I looked, there was a lady. I'd say it's a lady because her hair was long, and she seemed to be on the other side of the intersection. And she told me to come to her. Now, given the fact that she was on the opposite side of the intersection, and I had just got hit, I was a little hesitant to cross the street again because I thought I was going to get hit. So I replied, I don't think so. I think I'll get hit. But she replied that I would be fine. And the feeling I got with this person was like it was somebody I knew and loved like I would my own mother. Although to this day I still don't know who it might have been. I have a guess, and I'll tell you that later. But so I decided, okay, well, I guess I'll come. I really didn't even know how I was going to come to her or move, but I start feeling this gliding or moving feeling again. And as I start to move, I see a little speck of white light just to the right of my shoulder. And as I'm looking at the light, I noticed a picture of me pop up. Now, I'm 3 at the time, Peggy, but in this picture, I was about 9 or 10 maybe. And as I'm looking at the picture, I'm remembering the moment. And as I see my siblings in the picture, and I'm remembering the moment, and I'm like, hey, I remember this moment. And so as I'm looking at it, it goes by, and then another picture pops up or image, and I noticed that this was a cycle taking place. These pictures or images, they just keep coming by, and as I'm looking at everything, it's almost like I'm reliving it. And for it, they're going by. It seems slow, but actually it was going by like this, and it was going by really, really fast, and it was going by so fast. It's almost like I was processing all of the videos and images that were going by, and it was going by a little too quick for me. So I just had the thought, like, this is too quick. I can't take this. And it must have been noticed because at that point, the images of video kind of slow down. And when they slowed down, for long, it stopped on one picture. And as I'm looking at this picture, Peggy, it was of a young man who looked to be like, I'd say 21, I'd say 19 or 21. And he had his arms around a young lady. And as I'm looking at this picture, I'm, just checking it out, and it kind of seemed familiar to me. And the more I looked at it, the more familiar it became to the point where epiphany, I had an epiphany. Son, I had the word son. And I started thinking, my son, this is my son. And it was almost like I was shocked because at that instant I knew, yeah, this is my son. This is my son. And I was just taken back. It was almost like finding something that you had lost, you know, uh, 10 or 20 years ago, and you know, basically you find it again. But in this case, it was a son, and I was like shocked. So at some point the videos and images they continue. Um and I guess this is what is called now as a life, it's called a life review. And apparently this is something that um I guess everybody or most people will have at the point that we actually pass on. Um, so at some point, you know, all of these images and videos they stop. And but I got a little ahead of myself. There was a very crucial point after I got hit, that I was looking at the scene. Um, Before I actually went to her, I was looking at the scene, and as I was looking at the scene, um, my I could see my parents were to the right, and my was my mother and my aunt and some other people, and I could see a car and a person. And as I'm looking at the scene, I I'm feeling the emotions of everybody on the scene, and the emotions were uncomfortable. To me, they felt like somebody scratching their hands on a chalkboard, and I was wondering why I was having these feelings. And I was I was directed to look on the ground. Well, when I looked on the ground, it was like it, that on was me, and it was like, you mean tell me that is why I'm feeling the emotions? This is why everybody's feeling like this. And to me, it didn't make any sense, Peggy, because in my eyes, the ground had no, and it was pointless for anybody that I knew and loved to be worried about that thing on the ground when I'm perfectly fine. Because to me, I feel like I was perfectly fine. And I couldn't understand why anybody would be worried about that thing on the ground. And this got to the point where their emotions irritated me that I just had to get away from the whole scene. I had to get away from the whole scene. And it was at that point that she told me to come to her. Okay, now, after coming to her and being irritated by the scene, I remember being in a dark place. Um, the dark place was actually after the videos, and I remember being in this dark place, and it was like I was just there, just thinking, Peggy. I could sense that there were other people around me, but there was no communication. It was just me and my thoughts, and it seemed like I had been there, Peggy, for years, just me in the darkness. There was no fear, nothing, no torment. It was just me and darkness and peace. And at some point, I guess whatever I was thinking about in such deep thought, I guess I came to a realization or point or epiphany, because it was at that point that this changed. And I noticed it was still, but now I could see movements. I could see um, people, and I could see. I couldn't literally see like faces, but I could see the auras of people. It's like the people were like shadows, but the auras ran from one side of the ground all the way up and down to the other side. And the color looked like it was almost like a blue or greenish color, the auras, that is. And I was able to communicate, it was seen. So as at this point, at some point, since this, I try to put this in a linear perspective, but things aren't exactly linear over there. It's like everything's rolled up into one big ball of time. And but at some point, I believe it was right after my videos, I stumbled out. It's like I stumbled out of watching the videos, and now I'm in this tunnel. And to my left, I could see that there were other people stepping into the same tunnel. And to my right, I there was a person to my right that I did not want to look at. To be honest, Peg, I didn't feel worthy of looking at this person, because I understood that everything that all of those videos and images that I had just saw, I realized that this person had saw and knew him too. Um, and it was at this point that was this huge eye. I honestly don't know why, and I always question whether or not I want to talk about this eye. But there was a huge eye. It looked like it was the size of a wall in a room. And when I fell out of the videos or images, the eye noticed me, and I noticed the eye. I was in a place other than my own. It was like I don't like it was in another dimension realm other than mine, but I could see it, and I knew that it could see me. And that eye kind of gave me a little fear. This is the first time I actually felt fear through the whole episode. And the minute I felt that fear, Peggy from the right and coming from the direction of the person I did not want to look at, I felt the breeze. It was like a 1 or 2 mile an hour breeze. And when that breeze hit me, Peggy, it was as if the word fear didn't make any sense. And I knew that not only that, but I didn't have anything to fear in existence and anywhere in existence. And with that said,
Familiar with that breeze.
are you okay? Well, at some point, I found myself having a conversation with the person I now know to be Jesus. Um, I remember it was just I couldn't see. It was just mainly his face and 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 the garments he had on. But I was captivated by his eyes, Peggy, because when I looked at his eyes, it's like it was almost like X-rays. It was almost like I know. Well, each pupil had. If you've ever seen the sun come through the clouds, it looks like little rays. Well, his eyes had rays coming out of him, and as he looked at me, I knew that he knew everything about me, everything I could ever be thinking, everything I had ever done. And we were having a conversation, and it's like we talked for a long time. And it's but the whole time we're talking, I'm captivated by his eyes. They were almost hypnotizing me. And but it's like we were talking for a long time. And I remember him telling me that this conversation, I guess it was known that I would be coming back because he told me that this conversation that we were having, I wouldn't be able to remember everything. And it kind of irritated me a little bit. Um, and then he asked me, well, why do you want to go back? And my initial answer was I want to go back and help my mother raise my brothers. Okay, now Peggy, at this point I'm the oldest, I'm 6 years old, and which lets me know or let everybody else know that I already knew my mother was going to have more children based on the life review I just saw. So I told him I wanted to go back and help my mother raise my brothers,
Were you only child
which
then?
wasn't exactly, it was just me and one brother. It was just me and one brother. I was 3 and he was like 1. Um, uh, at that, he asked me why I wanted to go back. And my initial reaction was, I want to go back and help my mother raise my brothers, which wasn't exactly true. To be honest, Peggy, during a life review, I pretty much saw the life I was going to live, and I was focused on this drop top car I was going to have. So, so when he
You
asked
lied to
me,
God, you lied to Jesus.
yeah, it's like that, and that's ironic too. I thought about that afterwards,
Mhm.
but he asked me. I said I want to go back and help my mother raise my brothers, and and he actually chuckled at that. He actually laughed at that because he knew it was not true. And then he asked me again, well, why do you want to go back? And my answer this time was, and this was from the heart, was that I want to leave the world a better place than I had, because I felt like I had already left the world. I was gone. I was gone. I was dead. But I felt like I hadn't had any impact on the world being so young. And that's what truly was from the heart. So what is that? It was at this point that I found myself moving at a tremendous speed. I'd have to say it was the speed of thought, Peggy. Um, but the next thing I know is I'm back in front of the accident scene. And to me, it seemed like it had been 100 years, 40 to 50 years since I had been to this scene. It was almost like I had forgot about the scene by the time I got back to it. And I now knew that I was going to be going back and to be okay. I forgot the screen. What the scene now. Everything was on a screen, like a movie theater. When I came back to it, it was like everything was on a movie theater screen. Everything was on a screen. And I knew at any point I was going to be going back inside the screen. And I do actually remember being put inside the screen. Chimes, and I can feel the movement of going through like a tunnel. And the next thing you know is now I'm hovering, I'm looking through the bumper, looking at me, looking up at the bumper. Like I'm seeing there's 2 versions of me. And I'm knowing at any second that I'm going to be thrown back inside that body. Now this is very, very important, Peggy. I grew up in a church, and I haven't quite lived, a Christian, as it were, life, but I've pretty much been good people, I think. But of, of what we should be as Christians, and thought, right before, as I'm hovering inside this bumper, because I knew and the life that we saw. And I guess in my heart, I was wondering if I would be good enough to return back to that life that I was fixing to jump in and live. And I asked, will I be back? And I didn't hear a reply, but I'm knowing in any second, Peggy, I'm fixing to be back inside of this body. So I just had to know. I asked again. It was almost like I was rushing to get it out. Will I be back? And the answer that I heard was always. This time I heard the answer, and the answer was always. And the next thing you know is, voop, voop, I'm looking up at the bumper like nothing had happened. And that, for the most part, was what happened on the other side. Um, but I remember through everything, I was here for a little bit, and that was just the eye. I had no feeling of crying up until the point where when I got back, and now I'm looking up at the bumper, I remember the guy picking me up and giving me to my mother. And my mother was checking me out, and she was kind of frantic. And when I looked at her reaction, it kind of made me nervous because I'm thinking, "Oh, what is wrong with my mom? Why is she so frantic?" And I got to thinking, well, if my mama is crying and all of this, well, maybe I should be crying. What did I just see? What did I just see? So it was at that point I started crying for the first time. And and me and my mother talked about it. She had no idea that I was crying because of her. I wasn't crying because of what I just saw. But but that's how I ended up coming back to this reality. And but one of the things before we continue, one of the things that really stood out to me as a big moment was they took me to the hospital and they kept me for a little while, and then they were about to let me go because they felt like I was pretty much okay. I had a pretty good sized lump on my head, um, but they were pretty much telling my mother I'd be okay. And my grandmother was livid. She said, "There's no way you're gonna let my grandson go home, and he just got hit by a car." So she convinced the doctors to let me stay overnight. And overnight, my kidneys ruptured, and I was trying to pee, and it was hurting. So my mother came and take me out, cut it off, and she saw that there was blood in my catheter, and she just went ballistic. And they ended up basically she waved the doctors in, brought the doctors in, and I guess they patched me up pretty good because I'm still here. But eventually, that I was released. And this moment that stood out to me was, remember I told you my mother had one son other than me, and he was 1 year old. Well, when my mother brought me back to the house and she placed me in, he was on the ground, and when she placed me down to play with him, Peggy, when I looked at him, I was confused. And you know how a dog, when it looks at something that's confused, it kind of turns its head like, "What's this?" Well, when I looked at my brother, I was confused because I had just saw him die during my life review. And it was like, how am I seeing, it was like seeing his whole life during my life review, and then he's dead. And then next thing you know, I'm back in front of him as a baby before any of it's happened. And that was confusing to me. So I was like, how am I looking at you after, but I was so young, it wasn't long before I'm playing again with him, like, whatever, and pretty much, that's where the NDE um, stopped for quite a few years, and it was all but forgotten up until the point that my brother actually died, and that's when everything eventually came back to me. And how it did was remarkable. He had died. My brother had died in his sleep, and he had died of he was having heart issues, and we had knew he was having heart issues, and but nobody wanted to believe he would go. Everybody wanted to just be positive and believe he would be okay. So, and the doctors were leading us to believe that he would be okay. That's why it was so shocking to find that he had died overnight. And I was kind of upset. I felt like death had cheated me out of at least being able to say bye to my brother.
How old was he?
So, huh?
How old
He
was
was
he?
35 at the time. Uh, yeah, he was 35 at the time. And as I'm trying to cope with his death, it had been like, oh, maybe a week and a half, and I'm sitting in front of a computer, and I'm basically thinking about my brother, being in hell and being tormented and all this, and what happens when you die. Basically, this I'm just wondering what is he going through. So out of frustration, I just typed in Google, what happens when you die? And then these things popped up called near-death experiences. So I'm I just out of sheer wanting to know the answers. I watching these videos and to be honest, writing these people off. Oxymoron. How are you saying that you died but you're still here? So but one of the people who was one of these videos was so his reaction, his video looked so authentic to me because as he described his stuff, and his name was Ian McCormick.
Yeah.
He was stung by 4 box jellyfish or something.
Have you
And
seen the
as
movie?
I haven't seen, I didn't even know that they made a movie. I know they made a long documentary.
It's called The
Um,
Perfect Wave.
really, I'm
It's
gonna
on
have to check that out.
PureFlix.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
check that out.
yeah. Subscribe to PureFlix. It's on there.
Pureflix, okay, Pureflix.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for telling me that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sure to check
He's been
that
a
out.
guest on here.
Really?
I'll send you
Well,
the link.
wow. Yeah, I would love to chat with Ian because he had such an impact on my life without knowing it. But so as I'm watching one of his videos, and he seems so authentic to me because when he would describe something, he would look to the left or he would look right. And I was thinking, well, man, this guy, if he's acting, he's doing a pretty good job because he was looking like he actually expected to see whatever he saw when he looked to his left or right. So I he piqued my interest enough to really delve into his videos. So he had got with he had made, I guess he had got with this one like a movie producer or somebody that made like a professional video for him. So we were able to see what he saw. And it gets to this one point where he's in the darkness. And he's in this darkness and he says, and they show something looking at him, some eyes looking at him. And just like this, Peggy, I'm in front of this computer watching this video, and it gets to that point, and I said, "Oh, I remember that." Just like that, like that. I said, "Whoa, what do I mean? I remember that." I backed away. I backed away from that computer like it had just spoken physical words to me, and but that memory was real. So I had to step outside and think about that memory. And when I stepped outside, it was as if God had opened up the floodgates to everything that I had saw and everything I remember. And I was like, whoa, hold on. So if these people were talking about they died, and I have this memory, and I'm like, what? That was death? It was like, whoa, that was death. I couldn't believe I had caught a glimpse of death. And it just like it took me back. I just couldn't believe. I was like, well, if that was death, we don't have nothing to worry about. I always viewed death like I like to say like it was the pit bull when it was really just a poodle. It was very peaceful. And as a matter of fact, with those memories, I had a little bit of that breeze, that peace come with me too. Almost like a gift, like an attachment to the
I just got
memory.
goosebumps.
Yes. And yes, so that's how it came back to me. And so I went from being completely broken down and doubting these people to being completely jealous in 30 seconds because
You're
I was
completely what?
so I was jealous. I was
Jealous.
jealous. I was broke down because my brother, I was tormented by what he could be going through. But when those memories came back to me, like he could came, I was like so and so, like wow, I knew he was okay at that point. I knew he was okay, and I believe that was the reason that God waited to that point to give me the memories back because I don't think I could have gotten past it so easily without him saying, "Hey, well, what are you worried about? You've already been here. You've already seen this. Remember this?" And it was like, "Oh, okay, okay. Well, he's fine. He's fine, you know." And it was able. I was able to keep going, you know, as a result of those memories coming back to me. But yeah, that was just the beginning of a life full of amazing instances and things of that nature. I
Did
don't
you
know
go
if
to
you
your
have
mother then and tell her?
well, I couldn't talk. Afterwards. Okay, yeah. Well, of course, I went to her, and I imagine it kind of sounded kind of crazy at the point, but at the time, it was like, "Look, Mom, check this out. Okay, I know you ain't gonna believe me, but I died before, and it was fine. And imagine her though; he's only been dead like a week and a half, and then I come to tell her that I had died before. So I can understand her reaction, you know, seeing as how, you know, because she was kind of like, "Oh, really, son? Okay, well, maybe now is not the best time, you know, to talk about it." And I had to catch myself because, wow, I mean, I did just like throw it on her. But at the time, you got to understand, Peggy, I couldn't talk until as an adult, everything came back to me. Because at the time when it happened, I couldn't even talk. You know, if I could, maybe I could utter one word or two, but I couldn't hold any conversations. So it was only after all of this came back to me that it came out to tell her for the first time. And of course, to her, it's going to sound like rubbish. As a matter of fact, she all but told me that one day because it wasn't long after he had died, and the memories that came back to me that I was having these tremendous headaches, Peggy, all through his death and all of that. I was having headaches, and these headaches were so painful. Like, I'm a tough guy, but these headaches were so painful. I would take the pill. I would take the pill before the pain hit. I would just basically pills to stop the pain from hitting me. And so just a few days after everything came back to me, my mother was over there, and I was having one of these headaches, and she asked me if I would go to the hospital. And I'm like, "No, I'll be okay. You know, I'm a big boy. I can take a couple of pills and I'll be fine." But I thought about my brother just dying and what my mother could be going through. So I said it would be selfish of me, you know, not to go just because I feel fine. I need to go to ease her mind. So I said, okay, well, I'll go. So I went to the hospital with as they gave me and all of that. So they put us in a room to wait for the results. And as I'm laying in the bed and my mother's to the right in the chair, the nurse basically busts through her, Peggy. And as she busts through the door and she runs and she puts something on the side of my bed. And as I'm looking at this thing that she put on the side of my bed, I realize it's a defibrillator. And I'm thinking she's talking to me while I'm looking at this defibrillator. And I'm thinking, why she just put this defibrillator on my bed? Now, she's not realized she's sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher to me right now because she's trying to tell me that the doctor came in, they saw some blood, they're gonna be taking you up and prepping you for surgery. And so I managed to get all of that, you know, while I'm worried about the defibrillator. And sure enough, a few minutes later, the doctor comes in and he says, "Mr. Rogers, we found an aneurysm. We will be taking you upstairs and prepping you for emergency surgery." And I'm like, whoa.
Brain
So, and he pretty
aneurysm?
much brain aneurysm. And and that's where the headaches were coming from. So he pretty much, I don't know if you ever watched House, the show House, but he pretty much like Dr. House said, "Well, good luck," and walked out of the room. after dropping that bombshell on me. So I looked at my mother.
Good luck.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Good
I
luck.
told her, yeah, good. And I guess that's the best he could do. But I I'm sitting there I'm basically in shock, laying in this bed, and I'm thinking, now my mother's gonna lose another son, and I'm thinking, no, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. But by now, I remember what happened to me, and to me, to be honest, it didn't make any sense. I'm gonna give you the honest feeling that I had sitting in that bed, Peggy. To me, it made no sense that I would be taken right now. And here's why. Because um to me, I hadn't did anything of significance. I had children, I've had somewhat of a life, but to me I hadn't had anything significant that I had done in this life. So why would I be taken? Because now I want to stay. I can't leave. I thought about leaving. I thought about that piece. I'm not gonna lie, Peggy. I thought about, well, cool. I get to go home again. I mean, it's not so bad. And then my children, then all of a sudden it didn't look so cool anymore. And I was like, well, I can't leave. As much as all of this peace and everything might be waiting on me, I can't leave. And I got to thinking, well, does what I want mean anything? Um, and I got to thinking, well, it has to. Otherwise, none of this makes any sense. Because if I didn't really want to come back 100%, take me out one day. And it just gave me the confidence of knowing that what I was thinking was being heard. How I was thinking was being heard. And I looked at my mother and I asked her what she thought about everything that I had told her. And that's when she looked at me. She real slowly she turned to me and she said, well, to be honest, I think you made up this fantasy world because you could deal with your brother's passing. And I was like, whoa. But at the same time, it wasn't about her and what she thought. Um, it was basically about everything that was going on in my life. Although I wanted her to believe me, right now that's not important. So I looked at her and I said, just based on the thought that I had, it didn't make any sense. And I told her, Mom, I think I'm gonna walk out of this hospital with nothing wrong with me. Now I said that, and I was probably 20% certain that that would be the case. So as it wasn't long before they come and they get me and they take me upstairs. And when I arrived on this floor, Piggy, and they started rolling me down, and I'm looking from room to room, Piggy, I thought that they had took me to the wrong floor because most of these people look dead already. And it's rolling down, they finally get me to my room, and I'm in my bed, and I'm just settling in, just taking everything in. And I noticed that they had pulled this woman in front of my door, and this was. I now know that this was on purpose, not by them, but by God. They pulled this woman and they stopped her in front of my door, and the woman, her, her eyes looked pretty much rolled back in her head, and she had no movements, no nothing that says life. It's in this body, and right behind her were her husband and I believe their son. And when they rolled her away, I asked her, I was like, well, what's wrong with that lady? And the nurse looked at me and said she had an aneurysm. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm supposed to be, that's supposed to be me. That's going to be me. So, but when they rolled her away, I was able to notice a plaque that was on the wall. Now, at the time, I'm too far away from the plaque to see what it says, but I noticed it was on the wall. So as I'm sitting there trying to cope with everything, Peggy, um, I looked at my mother and I thought about, everything that I was thinking about, could I be dying? Then I wondered very seriously, does what we want matter at all? And I believed it did. And I said a real quick prayer. I said, God, I need you to show mama that everything I told her was real and make all of this go away. Thank you. Amen. Just a real quick, short prayer like that. But that's probably the first time in my life that I've ever prayed and knew it was being heard. We pray, but we hope it's heard. But I knew that prayer was being heard. So it wasn't long before, they're coming and they're giving me other stuff, prepping me for surgery. And after a while, they come back in. I'm thinking that at any time they're gonna come and get me. And after a while they come back in. I guess they had did some more tests right before surgery or right after the prayer. And they came back in and said, Mr. Rogers, we're having some problems. We're having issues locating the blood now, and we need your permission to do a spinal tap. And the minute he said having a problem locating the blood, the first thing came to my head was my prayer was answered. So of course I'm like, at this point, do whatever you got to do, dog. Oh yeah, sure. What do I need to sign? What do I need to sign? So I gave them the permission, and they took me down to get the spinal tap. And as I'm laying in that bed on my back, on my stomach, and the doctor is prepping me for the incision, yeah, I remember him directing me not to move. And I'm like, okay, fine, I won't move. This is only a needle. But when he stuck that needle in my back, I think I jerked ever so slightly. And the reaction from this doctor, he was so angry. And I knew that I said, well, if he's this angry about me moving, I better not twitch or move a muscle. And I didn't. And he managed to finish the process. And when he finished, he asked me if I wanted to take a look. I said, sure. It looked like clear drinking water. He said they were expecting to see cloudy fluid, bloody cloudy fluid. And instead it looked like pure drinking water. So when I didn't see any blood in there and they didn't see any blood, I knew at that point it had been answered. So at this point, I mean, my whole world is going around because wow, I've had this near death experience and now this aneurysm is one away. I'm like, wow, man, life is just being thrown a lot at me right now. So they take me back up to my room, and it wasn't long before they come back in and they asked me to sign some papers because they had given me steroids and things of that nature, prepping me for the surgery or for whatever swelling or whatever. And they were worried about me suing them. But that was the last thing in my mind. Who would sue a hospital just trying to save your life? So I know what you guys are doing. So I
And you've
signed
been
the
given a
paper.
miracle. You don't have
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But what? As before I signed the papers, I took the time because I knew, Peggy, I knew that the doctors would have no idea what happened. So, but I knew. So I took the time to mess with the doctors a little bit. I said, well, Doc, can you tell me what happened to the blood? I mean, where could it went, Doc? I mean, blood just disappeared, does it? I mean, and the doc looked at me and he said, to be honest, Mr. Rogers, we don't know. But we want to keep you for a few days and just, monitor you and make sure everything's okay. So after 2 days of being in the hospital, I couldn't take it anymore because I already knew this was meaningless. This was pointless. You're not going to find anything. I'm going to be okay. So I actually convinced the doctors to let me go. And reluctantly, he said, well, we have no reason to keep you. And if you want to go on your own reconnaissance, well, that's fine. We'll just sign these papers and we'll let you go. So I'm like, cool, I'm going home. So it was at this point I'm able to walk around my room finally, and I walk up to this plaque now. Now I can read the plaque, and as I'm looking at the plaque, Peggy, the plaque said, "Miracles grow where you plant them." And
Mm.
I thought about that. I'm like, wow. And I thought about all of the people that I had saw on this floor as I was coming to my room, and I got to thinking, well, who am I to receive a miraculous healing? Who am I? I'm not any better than this mother, this grandmother, this father, this. Who am I? So I immediately prayed that everybody on that floor be healed. I prayed that everybody on that floor be healed. I didn't know them from Adam. I don't know if they all were healed or none of them were healed. But I put that prayer out there expecting something to happen.
I
So,
got chills again, and I'm about ready to cry. I don't know why.
well, good, good, because I want people to hear this. I want people to understand that we are not alone in any of this by far. But here's the kicker. So as I'm so they have a policy that any patient has to be rolled down to the car. So because I was ready to go, I was ready to just walk, home. Because at the time it was my wife at the time, I know she was at home with the kids, and I wasn't gonna have her wake up and come get me. I only live like 2 miles down the road. So, but with their policy, um, she had to roll me downstairs. So she takes me downstairs, and she asked me, "Do you expect your ride?" And I'm like, "Well, I knew she wasn't coming." I said, "She'll be here in a minute. Don't worry about it. You can go ahead and take this. I'll just wait here." And so she reluctantly said, "Okay, well, I guess I'll go." So she took the wheelchair away, and it's at this point that I get chills because what are the odds that the minute she walks away and she's gone far enough that I feel okay that I can go ahead and leave. The minute I get up to leave is the same minute that the husband of the woman that was behind me gets up to walk out the door. So I'm right behind him, like three steps. I'm like, wow, that's ironic. That, I'm leaving as he leaves. So as I'm walking behind him, the thought comes in my head: talk to him, tell him his wife is going to be okay. And I'm like, I don't know where that thought come from, but that's crazy. There's no way I'm going to tell this man, talk to him, and tell him his wife is going to be okay. Peggy, this was the last thing on my mind I wanted to do, but it's like I was being driven, guided to
I know
do it.
that feeling.
So the next thing you know is excuse me, sir, and I'm talking to him, and I said, you don't know me from Adam, but I was just upstairs with your wife. I was in a room, and I believe your wife's gonna be okay. And his face just lit up a little bit, and I told him why I thought she would be okay. I told him about what happened to me, and how I didn't feel like I was anything special. But the more I'm talking to him, Peggy, it's like all of the hope and confidence I had, I was giving to him. And knowing that I'm telling this man all of this, and knowing I'm not God, I'm no angel. Who am I to say this? I was getting more depressed, and I was taking his depression and giving him my confidence. So by the time I walked away from him, he was smiling, and I was looking like he was, and it was one of the biggest drizzling. But
You
by
would
the
say that again, you
time I
froze for a
actually made
second.
it home, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, you just froze for a second. I missed what after you told him
Okay.
that. Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to go back? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So
I just
after I told him,
so what was his reaction?
his reaction was I could see that it uplifted him. His
Okay.
spirits were uplifted. And I could tell as much as he was uplifted, I was taken down. You know, I was by the time I walked away from that man, I was a mess. And as I'm taking these steps home, I'm thinking about everything, and it just hit me like, wow. I mean, you know, I wasn't so much thinking about everything that happened to me. I was thinking about I just told this man, and I didn't want him. I just didn't want to have given him false hope. So I'm praying the whole time I'm walking. I'm like, please God, please help this man's wife. You know, please don't let me have given him false hope. And by the time I actually got home, it would have been hard to tell the difference between my tears and the rain. And to this day, I don't know. I had to think she's okay, given everything that happened. I had to think that she's okay. Um, but I will after that. You know, I'm pretty much trying to live life, and from time to time, since I was in high school, there was a a young woman. She was my girlfriend at the time in high school, and I ended up having to move away. But from time to time, 1 year, 3 years, 6 years, I would try to look her up just to say hi, see how life had been, how life had treated her. I didn't know if she was in a relationship or not. Didn't It wasn't about that. I just wanted to say hi and see how life had treated her. So I would try to look for her from time to time. And as I'm trying to search for her, I never could find her. Year after year after year. So another one of these times popped up, and I'm looking for her again. And I noticed a young man with her last name. So I knew he was I knew he was in the same city, and he had to have been some kin to her because the last name was awkward. And what's the chance of that last name, of someone with that last name being in this city and not knowing her? So I said, I don't know if he might be her son or her nephew or whatever, but I said, I'm gonna contact this young man and see if he can tell me about my ex-girlfriend. So I reached out to him, and to my surprise, like a few days later, he replies and he asked me who I am. And I said, well, I explained to him that me and the person I was asking him about, we were a couple at one point, and I didn't know if she was in a relationship or not. I didn't mean no disrespect. I was just trying to reach out and say hi and see how things had been. And to my surprise, he said, well, the person you're talking about is my mother. And I'm like, wow, what? How is she? I mean, is she okay? I know she had a daughter and all of that. I know she by now her daughter's a grown woman, but how is she? I mean, how is everybody? And she said, well, he said, my mother's been dead since I was 10. I was like, oh wow, are you kidding me? That was like a hit in the stomach. And so I asked him, I was like, well, can you send me some pictures of everybody, um, just so I can see how everybody had grew up. And so he sent me some pictures of the whole family, and I'm looking through the pictures and I'm seeing everybody. I'm seeing her, and then I saw a picture of him, and as I'm looking at this picture, like wow, it's kind of look familiar to me. Like I've seen this picture before, but how? This is my first time seeing. And then it hit me. This young man had just sent me the same picture that was paused on when I was 3 years old. He had his arms around, he had his arms around a young lady. And I'm thinking, hold up, I have seen this picture before. I said, the last time I saw this picture, I knew I was looking at a picture of my son. So I'm like, wow, I said, well, um, can you tell me about, where's your if your mother's been dead, who's been raising you all of this time? I mean, where's your father? He said, well, there was a man that his mother's boyfriend, and they had been together for years, and he pretty much raised them as his own. And I said, well, where is if he's not your father, where is your father? And he said, I haven't yet found him. And Peggy, when I heard those words, I haven't yet found him. I was at that point. All of those, I realized all of those years of his mother's name popping in my head. I think she had guided me to find him. And it was at that point, you know, because he didn't know what I was thinking. It was at that point I said, well, I believe you have indeed found your father. And I broke everything down to him and let him know, what happened and how things got like this. There were, we grew up apart. And not a week, not a week later, I drove down and met him for the first time, and he actually came and spent Christmas with us. And I've been asked, well, have you ever thought about getting a DNA test? But after talking to him and we basically are, he's a chip off the old block. I'll just put it like that. And the being the fact that I knew he was my son on the other side, if I did get a DNA test, it would basically be validation for somebody else. Because in my eyes, I have all the validation I need. But I asked him, I said, well, I think you're my son. And I explained to him, and I said, if you want to get a DNA test, we can do that. He said he didn't feel the need to do it either. He said, because talking to him, I felt like it felt like we had knew each other all those years. And to this day, we're still close and we keep in contact. But um, this it's hard to believe that this is my life, Peggy.
Yeah.
This is stuff you see on movies, and 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 it was I skipped. There was a bunch of things I left out, but I'll try to throw a couple of good points in that happened. One was okay. If think about this, Peggy, if you have watched any preview of any movie, by the time when you get to a point in the movie that you remember, hey, I remember seeing that in the preview. Well, it's no different in my life, if except for these are deja vus. Okay. So of my one day I stepped out of a store and I had this little phone. And as I looked at the phone, all of a sudden it was like I was remembering weeks ahead of time, or I was remembering something in the future about this phone. It's actually like I was living the moment as I'm remembering it. And I recalled having a conversation with Daniel Brinkley on that phone. Have you ever heard of Daniel Brinkley? I remember having a conversation with Daniel Brinkley on that phone. And not a month later, I found myself having a conversation with Daniel Brinkley on that phone. He actually called and talked to me on that phone. And
Awesome.
that's just one. And I'm gonna tell you, Daniel is a character. Daniel is a
Yeah.
character.
Yes.
He is good people, and but he will not march words with you. I asked him, because when I'm talking on the phone, I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking to Daniel Brinkley. I was like, well, Daniel, I wanted to ask him so many questions, but it was almost like I had so many questions I didn't have any. So I just, I managed to ask him one question that really I want to know how he dealt with seeing things in the future, how can you control the things you see? And he basically told me, good luck with that. He hadn't figured it out. But we talked for about, I'd say 15 to 17 minutes. And it was a good conversation. And I'll never forget the conversation I had with Daniel. But the other incident that happened really let me know just how thorough the life review was. So I'm at a meeting lunch at a buffet with my wife at the time, and I'm sitting in line, Peggy, and I just happened to be glancing down at the feet of this woman that was in, just waiting, and I just happened to be glancing down at the feet area when I noticed she walked away. She got ready to walk away, and she kind of stumbled and fell. But with me looking at her feet, it's like I knew I had saw that before. Peggy, I knew I had saw that craziness and the way in which she fell. It was like, what could she have tripped over? It's almost like something out of nowhere tripped her because her feet didn't even come across each other to trip himself. So I was like shocked. I was like, what made this woman fall? But I knew I had saw it. The point that I knew I had saw that happen before, as crazy as it was, it took me off almost like in shock mode. Because at this point, I hadn't had any big thing to trigger just how strong those deja vus were. I mean, the videos were. But when she fell, I knew I had saw it. So I'm right behind her. Now, normally, anybody in that position, you would walk up and you would help the lady up. I was in such shock, Peggy, from what I had saw. I walked up and I picked the plate up and put the plate up and left the woman on the ground, Peggy. I was just shocked. I was on automatic pilot, helping up, but I was helping the plate up instead of her. And it was only I didn't snap out of it until other guys rushed to her and they were all looking at me like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, you nut?" And it was only at that point I realized that I didn't pick the lady up. I picked up the plate. And when I got back to my seat, my wife, of course, she let me have it. And I was like, "Well, you know about my NDE stuff." I said it had something to do with my near-death experience. I remembered seeing that before, and I was just in shock. Uh, but when I realized I had saw that before, I took the time to look at the whole room, the paintings on the wall, and the people and the conversation. And sure enough, everything looked like I looked so familiar, like I had seen this whole setup before. What's on that person's shirt, the painting on that wall. I had seen it all before. And it was at that point I realized just how thorough the life review was. And when I tell you I've had an amazing life, Peggy, I have. Yeah, I mean, I cannot complain. People think, you might want riches and fame and all that but the life I've had, it's nothing but a blessing. It's nothing but pure thank you that I have, just from being able to live life with the visions and the outlook that I do, you know. And that's why I'm sharing these stories with you, Peggy, and everybody else. Um, I noticed that each time I said the story, I'm able to give like I've given you parts that I wasn't able to give in the last review, because there's just so much. You try to cram so much into a little time, and inevitably things get left out. But I'm glad I was able to put a few points just in previous interviews in yours,
Have you
and I'll be
seen
happy to answer any
Daniel's?
questions.
Have you seen Daniel's movie,
Uh,
Saved by the?
yes, I've watched that
It's on
several
YouTube.
times.
Yeah,
Yes, I've watched that one several times,
I have too.
and
I like to listen to it when I'm doing dishes.
yes, and I was actually gonna at one point try to become a volunteer with Daniel in his hospice work. And I still want. I feel like this would be the perfect place for me to be able to help people. I mean, what better way than help somebody transition when I can tell you the steps by step process of it all, So I mean, I'm sure me and Danny, um, we're not finished. Um, I'm sure we'll meet again in some type of way or through his foundation or whatever. I hope he's okay. I haven't seen or heard from Danny in, oh, it's been some years. So I hope he's okay.
He has a Facebook. I don't know if you have Facebook, but he has a Facebook
I
page.
do, but I haven't been off. I haven't.
I don't either.
Since I started giving these interviews. I haven't. But since I've started giving interviews, I've started to open up, and I think, oh, so, okay, I'm gonna start using Facebook because people might want to reach out to me, and so I'm gonna open. Well,
Yeah. I had about 5,000 friends and I got rid of it about a month ago, and I picked up an old one, make sure I had 0 friends. I just messaged people about being on the show on it. That's all I want it for. I don't want to get
yeah,
into
pretty much.
politics and drama.
Yeah,
I don't have
exactly,
time.
exactly. Exactly. I just got on it just to say hi to friends and family every 2, 3 months, whatever.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
I keep thinking about, I'm trying to think the exact words you said, something like, I haven't done anything with my life yet.
I what?
I
I
believe
didn't
after
hear
your
you.
NDE, you felt like you hadn't done anything with your life yet.
Yeah, like I hadn't put, I hadn't did anything for good for the world, but I know it changed me. Uh, and I know as a result, I've did some good. That's why I worry about whether or not I'm fixing to check out now because I mean I've made it a point to try. I haven't been perfect. I mean, but to be honest, I don't think I have to be. But there's no effort to be a good person. There's no effort to make this world a better place as a result of me being here. And that's what I endeavor to do. That's my point. Like, let me give you an example. For the last, I say, 5 years, everywhere I go, if I happen to step out of my car and there's a parking lot, if I see a nail or a screw, I'll pick it up and I'll throw it in the trash because I may not know if I saved somebody from having a flat, but I know there's a chance. And I'll probably pick up 5,000 nails and screws. So, just little things like that, that I do. I help homeless people. Basically, I don't look at anybody in society like I look at we're all brothers and sisters. And we're all living different types of lives, but basically we're a network of souls. Uh, we should help each other. You know? I don't now. My religious beliefs have changed a little bit um, because I don't know how you feel about the religious aspects of things, but in my eyes, I have to give reincarnation a thought because how we apparently come in and out of these bodies. Um, and how I was able to remember my life before I lived it. And I don't know if we picked our parents, but I've heard through other near-death experiences that, yeah, we picked these lives. So even though I've had a near-death experience, I still look at other NDEs to basically try to find some commonality in thought processes and how we look at life. And so I'm pretty much researching and as I'm giving them. So that's where I am right now.
Personal view and conclusion I've come to is I think the other side is timeless. You can go forward in time and see the future. You can go back in time and see the past. You can see even scenarios of things like I saw what my kids' life was going to be like if I died at 25. I saw them in the immediate future discussing the fact that mom had died. Of course, that never happened. But I was shown because I asked, I said, I didn't want to stay in heaven. I want to go back and raise my kids. And I said, if you can show me that my kids would be better off without me, for whatever reason, I agreed to stay. If not, I beg to return. And then I seen Jesus from behind and I just flew over and joined him. And we dropped down to earth just like that. And we're over top our trailer roof. And all of a sudden there was no roof on the trailer. We could see right through it. And then we dropped down closer. And there's my 3 boys in their bedroom talking about the fact that mom had died.
Wow.
And then so a couple months or weeks, I'm not sure how long it was after the NDE, I had this depression because I lost my twins. And I walked down after I got out of the dishes to the living room we built off the trailer was 2 steps down, and my husband was sleeping on the floor with the 3 boys. And I thought I felt bliss for the first time since I'd lost my twins. I said, "Oh, how cute, my family laying
Yeah.
there asleep." And when all of a sudden I was back in 1966. I was 5 years old. I was standing outside the bathroom, knocking on the door, telling my dad I gotta pee. And my dad was mad and he slammed the newspaper shut, and I jumped. And I'm in this state of, I got to get back to 1986. I don't want to be in 1966. I was like in some kind of time slip. And I
Yeah.
ran out the back door. I was scared. I'm like, how do I get back? It was like I knew where I was in this room, but yet I was more back there and I was fighting to get back. I didn't know
Yeah.
what in the heck that was. And I ran into a guy, it's a friend of my husband's. He said, I was knocking on the front door, which I thought later, that's weird because that's how the thing started. I was knocking on the bathroom door, asked tell my
Wow.
dad I got pee. He says, knocking on the front door, the TV was loud, feared he couldn't hear me, so I walked around to the back room and I ran right into it, but I'm shaken up. I can't speak. And I mean, how do you tell something like that? And so he woke up my husband and he said, there's something wrong with your wife. And he's like, come on, get a beer. And so I'm left out there alone on the porch. I'm like, what was that? And it took me a while to get fully back and stay back. And I was scared that I was going to slip back there for a while. I probably stayed outside for an hour, just shook up from it. Of course, I didn't
Wow.
tell anybody, but then I'm trying to figure, I did therapeutic foster care and I talked to a psychiatrist later. And I said, do you suppose maybe my dad sexually abused me? Because I knew he did one of my sisters and I have no memory of it, but why am I so shook up? And he said, oh, you don't want to remember if he did or something. But then I remembered more of it. I remember that when my dad slammed the paper shut, he come out and he said, now you go sit on that toilet and you stay there all night. You don't get up and you're not going to until morning, and you're not going to tell your mother either. And he went to bed. So I'm sitting there on the toilet. Now, this isn't long after my 5-year-old drowning. And so I'm sitting on the toilet all night, bored. I'm looking around. I can still see the pink dippity doo jar and all these things on the counter. And there's a window at the top of the ceiling above the toilet. And I remember wishing I could go out that window and go catch lightning bugs or play or something. And all of a sudden, I know it sounds insane, but I seen a ghost, like looked to me like a little boy on his arms, on his elbows and knees, skimming up the wall and go out the window. And I'm thinking, is that me that's out there? Is this somebody come out of me? Is mom going to come in the bathroom? I'm not going to be here. I thought, no, I'm here. I couldn't understand it. And it took me decades to understand that memory. And I realize now, come to the conclusion, when I drowned, I was out of my body like you were. You were out of your body and having, but mine was earthly. It wasn't in another realm. And I
Yeah.
was out of my body doing this stuff. And I think part of me, did it before when I drowned, but there was a physical me sitting there watching it. And it's
Yeah.
like
Look
part of me
at
went out and
everything.
had this. I'm like, get back in here. You're going, like the neighbors are going to see you out there or something. You're going to get in trouble. But I didn't breathe a word of that. That makes no sense. But I just know it shook me up. And I thought, and the only thing I think of, I guess where I had the NDE now, because I remember my drowning. I think you had the way you remembered when you saw Ian McCormick's, and you had his
Yes.
it's like in your face, remember? Well, not long after my second NDE, it was like that when I remember my drowning. It was like all of a sudden, so this nice guy by myself one night, all of a sudden it was like this movie played of the drowning from front to back. Oh my God, did I drown when I was little? And I went, that's a long, yeah, you did, yeah. And so I understand those time slips. And I understand how the
Yeah.
memory can be away from you. And then when it comes back, it's back.
Oh yeah. It's back full 100% clarity too. Yes. Yes, indeed. I don't know what this thing is that we call life, Peggy, but there's a purpose to it all. I believe there's a purpose to it all. I've heard life is a school. I've heard where this is some type of simulation. I've pretty much heard it all. But the one fact that I know about it all is that we're not from.
Or what? Here you go. Something happened. You're muted. Somehow you got muted. There you go. Okay. Somehow you got muted
No, I don't
just
know
for a
what all
second.
this. Okay. Well,
So,
can you
so
see
what
me?
was your theory? I want to hear your theory.
Okay, basically, we're not from here, and eventually we got to go back home. But the thing is, I think we get caught up in this, and we think this is life, which is why I had to be told to let go. We had to get to the point we had to let go of all of this to actually go home. Um, and but there are a bunch of kids, that are remembering past lives, and knowing what I know about near-death experience and hearing these kids talk about these past lives, it it only makes sense that reincarnation plays a role, you know. And that's a far cry from what I was raised believing in a Baptist church, Church of God in Christ. It's completely different. So in that aspect, my religious beliefs have changed ever so slightly. But I did recall vividly talking to Jesus. So I don't know about any of the rest of it. I know he is indeed real. And yes, I appreciate every second of the life that I've been blessed to live.
I come back after my second NDE feeling like you, like very strongly, like I didn't do anything with my life. Well, actually, I felt that way in the bright white light. That was my first thoughts was really hadn't done anything. Like I thought my kids are little, they'll forget me in time. And I just felt like I didn't like I was kind of mute. I wasn't talking. I wasn't sharing. I wasn't telling my past, about the
Yeah.
child abuse or anything. I was just so quiet and kept everything in. And I started realizing that I had a job to do. And like I was meant to do something and I need to start doing it. And I remembered a promise I made myself when I turned 18 that I was going to help abused kids somehow. And I thought I need to do that. I need to start fulfill that promise I made.
Well,
So, and that the part about your pictures and the negatives you mentioned,
yeah,
when I made that promise to myself, I saw like the black and white negatives going across, and there's these pictures of all these kids. And I was like, these kids will continue to be abused. Like it don't stop with me just because I'm getting out of
oh
the house at
wow,
18. These kids are going to continue to be abused. But this morning I had the strangest feeling. I'm flipping through my channel and I realized how they look like negatives. And then I got looking at you and look at the screen. It almost looks like a negative picture. And
wow,
I just felt like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like this was meant to be. All these people that I've interviewed, they're all these like negative looking, but they're color, they're not black and white, but
yeah,
they're set up in this how negative row used to be with the black and spaces between. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what all of this is, but uh, it's it's interesting to say the least. And but eventually we leave and we get to experience that peace again. But I'm just trying to make a difference while I'm here, and it seems like that's what you're supposed to do too, Peggy. So
Are you going to
there's
write a
no,
book?
I already have.
Oh,
I'm Peggy. There's a point I didn't. There's something haven't said too much about in either of these interviews, but part of me was a little hesitant to just really get out there because um, you know in my book I talk. I'll send you a free PDF of the book. But in
is
the
it
book I
out
talk
yet
about
to order?
no, no.
Okay.
I haven't because I was trying to get it published for Christian Publishing, and they
Uh-huh.
want to charge me a pretty good amount to publish it, and I'm just haven't got to the point where I'm comfortable with spending that amount to publish the book. So I've just been pretty much sitting on it. And on besides that, but the book is called The Inevitable Illusion. But besides that, you know, I was I was hesitant because um, I was shown that whatever life I saw, it was basically a possible version of their life because free will dictates a little bit of what goes on. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I explain all of that in the book. So I'm gonna try if I can get this book published before the next couple of months. I'm gonna see if I can go ahead and get it published. I've been sitting on it. It's been finished for like 2.5 years,
My
Peggy.
publisher don't charge anything. He's a former
Oh,
monk. He just gets 50% of the sales.
really?
I'll send you
Um,
information.
do that. Do
He didn't
that.
charge me
Do that.
nothing, not for the cover, not for a thing. I never gave him one dime.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely an option I would entertain. I'll be looking forward to that information you sent to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
How many interviews have you, are we still recording or just
Yeah,
me
we're
and you?
still recording. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
I just chit chat. Um, it's over 300 now
Oh, wow.
and over 3 million views in 2 years.
Wow.
Not as good as some, but I think it's
No,
pretty good
that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
for not knowing what I was doing. I mean, I'm not a former podcaster or filmmaker or anything, I started, had no idea what I was doing. I look at the first ones, I'm
it
so
took a life of
embarrassed because
its
I said that.
own, huh?
Huh?
It just took a life of its own, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it goes. Pretty much how it goes. That's how my book started. I started out with just some notes, and before you know it, it turned into a bunch of notes. And before you know it, I had to put it all in the computer, and then I'm adding to it and adding to it. Next thing you know, I'm enthralled and just trying to tell the complete story as I could. But I think it's well over the time for me to get to publish the book. So I
I'll
welcome
send
any
you
information.
information.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Feel free to reach out to me if you ever want to talk again or reconnect. Just feel free to reach out to me, Peggy.
What state are you in?
I'm in Texas.
Texas. Okay.
Where you
All
at?
right. Ohio.
Oh, okay. All right. That's pretty good distance away, but that's actually where my ex is from. But reach out to me, and there's no telling.
Okay.
Maybe I'll see you at one of these NDE conferences one day.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
Bye.